Electricast. Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Mott's Applesauce. So you're looking for a snack your kid will love and you can feel great about? Give him a Mott's no sugar added applesauce pouch. Made from real, delicious apples and a good source of vitamin C, too. Perfect for tossing in a lunchbox or grabbing for on the go. Mott's. Real apples make real good applesauce. Learn more about Mott's no sugar added applesauce at Motts.com.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Sabine Schoepke, biz growth powerhouse and midlife disruptor on a mission to help more people with tools to turn struggle into success, purpose, and aligned financial freedom. After building multiple successful businesses and walking away from it all to rediscover meaning in the German Alps, Sabine created the Power Life Library to help others do the same, reignite purpose, reclaim power, and build their next chapter on their terms. From homeless to millionaire, cancer survivor to community builder, Sabine brings a no BS, deeply compassionate approach to change. She's here to talk about reinvention, identity, purpose, and what it really takes to stop performing and start living. Sabine, I am so excited to welcome you to the show. So welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I've been wanting to have you on. As I said, when we talked previously, what I loved was the sense of community I felt that you've been building on LinkedIn. And it really kind of just hit me that that's what you were doing. And I don't know how I knew that. It just felt that way just based on the content you were posting. That's why I reached out to you the first time to talk to you about possibly guesting on the show. And I'm glad that you said yes. And so what I love is that your story talks about from going from homeless to multimillionaire. You're someone who survived cancer, and then you've walked away from it all just to rebuild your life from the inside out. And I think that is amazing. I think it's extraordinary because, again, it feels like, especially from my generation growing up, you're told you go to school, if you go to college or university to get a degree, and then you find a job and you stay there until you retire. And that was just the mindset that what I grew up with. And so I love the fact that you decided, you know what, I'm going to live my life for me. So I want to know if you can just take us back into that journey. Like, what were some of those moments that shaped who you are today and what led you to your current work?
Okay. Well, I feel like I've always done it a little different than other people, like that whole mold of like your laid out path. That's just what it is. The programming that comes with it. I've always disrupted it a little bit from the beginning. And I left home, which was Germany, when I was 17, and then found myself in Toronto. By the time I was 19, I was homeless. And I started my first company, like literally on a park bench in Toronto. I started an export company, and I was always very lucky to meet people that believed in my vision along the way of my journey and supported me, whether it was with little things or bigger things. And so I never even got married. Like I once thought like I should get married, and then I almost got married and I ran away from my wedding. I was like, this is not for me. I don't think this is right. So I've always had these disruptions, and yeah, I got a lot of heat for it, but I always stuck to what felt right. Or when it didn't feel right, I was like, no, I need to change that. And so it wasn't an easy journey, but because you really got to stick to your own guns versus listening to everybody else who's giving you heat for all kinds of different reasons, whether it is out of judgment or their own insecurities, or you're like a mirror to them that they see what you do and they're like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. But instead of admitting to that, because that would be really painful for them, they lash out on you and say, you're crazy, what you're doing. So, anyways, I've had a lot of that in my life, and I've done really well with sticking to my guns and following my soul path along the way, my calling, my intuition. And then 2 years ago, after I sold my most recent company, and I have twins and they graduated from high school and then both decided they wanted to go back to Europe. I sat by myself and I was like, what the heck? Like, am I going to continue doing this? Sure, I can build more wealth and I can have an even bigger house by myself and I can drive even more nice cars. But it all seemed so meaningless at this point and that was really the decisive moment as my kids had left and I cleaned out the house. I found this old vision board I had created years ago underneath the cupboard, and I pulled it out and I looked at this and it made me cry because I realized, oh my God, you have checked all of these boxes. Like everything you ever wanted, you checked and then some, and you don't feel any different. You feel like you still need to run and you're not complete and you're not whole and you got to do more. And I was like, who am I trying to prove myself to? Like, what's the point of all of this? And that's when I realized this has got to stop because you will never arrive. And I felt tired. I'm like, I'm already tired. Now what? Like, run some more? No. And so that's when I decided I'm going to get rid of it all. Just give it away, sell some of the stuff, get rid of it all. It took me 6 months, sell the house, cars, all of my belongings, narrowed it down to 2 suitcases. And by December 31st in 23, I got on a flight to Munich. I arrived in Munich and I was like, and now what? And I realized I had always felt called to go back to the German Alps because my grandfather used to have a place there. And somehow that always pulled me in that direction. And it was my daughter who said, why don't you just go check it out? Like, go. You're free now. You're financially free. We're good. We're doing our own thing. The kids, you don't have to feel bad. Just do your thing. Figure out what that is. So I got a tiny little furnished apartment in an old farmhouse high up in the mountains. I spent 10 months there and sat with myself. And it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life because I wasn't used to just being by myself. And I had to get to know myself and like myself, be comfortable with myself, and then listen to what I really wanted for the second chapter of my life.
Yeah. As I was listening to you, it started making me think about how we're always after, like we're always chasing after more. And it was like you had that aha moment. It's like, what am I chasing? And what does all of this stuff even mean? Right? Because stuff is just stuff. And I think that's when we have that little bit in common where, as I've told you previously, like my husband and I, we now call Mexico home, but we had since 2020 had been moving kind of between Mexico, Canada, and the States. And our belongings we each had 2 suitcases and
Yeah.
that was it. And so to narrow it down and realize that it wasn't the stuff that made me happy, it was the experiencing of life that made me happy. So I love the fact that you realize, like, you know what, I need to find, I guess it's almost like finding yourself, because I did when I came here to Mexico the first time back in 2020. I found myself. I felt like I came alive. So I love that you shared that, because you can have, I guess, what people would measure success by, all the stuff that you accumulate, the money, the wealth, everything that you have. Or you can look at, like, what does success really feel like for me? And I think especially when your kids, they're grown, and they're now out of the house, so that that focus is no longer on the kids,
Yeah.
and now the spotlight's back on yourself. So I love that you had that moment and you were able to really say, you know what, let me do something for me, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because like you were saying, it was uncomfortable to be sitting in a place for 10 months and you're not in the doing of anything. You're just kind of like trying to get in touch with what it is that you want, right?
Right. And especially, I am German. I'm very grounded, very pragmatic, very focused, disciplined, hardworking. Like all of these things are true. And that's what I've done all my life. Like that's what I was used to. I was like, what am I? I'm here. Now what? Like, shouldn't you be doing something? It was really, really hard. And I think one of my greatest fears was to be alone, to just be on my own. And I I did have a relationship and I left him in LA and I said, I gotta go. I gotta do this for myself. I can't try to fill my cup constantly with outside things and from outside people and, more and bigger and all of that. Like, no, I gotta go. I gotta see what else there is because I realized that more wasn't actually gonna make me any happier. No, like, and I want to say that too, though. I realized I was in a very fortunate situation where I could make that choice, and people often say, well, you're so lucky because you were in a financial position to do this. But that I want to just diffuse because the thing is, I totally agree that we all need to pay our bills. There's no two ways about it. But everything else, the cream on top of like, oh, but I need a bigger, faster, nicer car, or I need a bigger house to keep up with my neighbors, or, like all of that is just nonsense that we don't need. And that's just filling something, like there's a hole inside of you. That's what I'm talking about. But then also, what I want to address is that not everybody needs to do what I did or what you're doing, like the big leaps, the big major changes. And that's kind of what I've been working on with people who come to me and say, I need help. Like, I want to change my life, but I can't do what you did. Well, you don't have to do what I did. There's a million, literally a million choices people can make differently. The tiny little steps that are going to get you there as well. For me, it was just this is part of my personality. I just like burn it all down and I start over. So, but nobody needs to do that. I think the biggest thing people need to realize that they do have the power of choice. You do have the power of choice to make small incremental little changes that will add up to a different outcome, to a different life, a different feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, well, you're known as the midlife disruptor, right? And I love that, by the way. But women, especially, at least the people that I've talked to, feel like we hit a ceiling. Like reinvention is too late. Like there's that, oh, I'm too old, or it's just, I've been there, I've done a bunch of things, and I'm only supposed to do this. This was my lot in life. So, for you, what does reinvention actually look like in real life? And what's one mindset shift that opens the door to building your next chapter on your terms?
So I want to say, let's look at life as three buckets. So let's start with the most tangible one, which is the physical one. Oh my God. So that one in itself, by the time I was 49, I hit that wall. And then I had some other things happen. I had a home invasion where I had horrible PTSD afterwards, and I got really depressed. And I could have gone down that rabbit hole, but luck had it, somebody introduced me to working out, like really working out. And I realized it made me feel better, like emotionally with my PTSD that I had and all of that. And I started working out. And today I look at what happened to me with the attack as a gift because it opened my eyes and put me on a completely different path, on a path of actually changing my life, the physical aspect of it. So by the time I was 49, I started working out, not because of vanity reasons, but because of emotional issues that I had from the PTSD. And it put me on that path that by the time I was 51, I was in the best shape of my life. I was blowing people away at Gold's Gym in Venice. I was leg pressing 760 pounds. There is no, I'm too old for this. Oh, the train has left the station. No, it's all up to you. It's all possible. And so today, when I walk into a supermarket, I always have people who are like, "Are you a trainer? Would you be interested in coaching me? I want to look like you." But I'm in my mid 50s and I only started at 49. So it's all possible. And I had all kinds of health issues. But you can fix those things. You can work around it. I can't live like a 20-year-old, but there's ways around it that I will still have results that blow people out of the water. And I am not special. I am not any more gifted or special than anybody else. So it's all possible. So there's the physical aspect. There's no excuses. Nobody can give me an excuses because I have walked that path and I still do. So then there is the emotional, the mindset one. Again, we need to realize the shift lays in realizing that we do have choices. We do have the power of choice. And again, it doesn't need to be big leaps. It's little changes that we can make that will harvest huge differences in our lives. And then the third one is what I group together as purpose. So it's the professional, the purpose, and the relationships. When I walked away from it all 2 years ago, I left it all behind. I left my relationships behind, my intimate relationship, as well as my friendships. And I took a chance of saying, well, we're going to see if and when I come back, who's still in my circle. And that's fine because sometimes we need to clean house. When we want to move forward, we need to realize who's holding me back, who's building me up, who's adding to my cup, and who is taking away from it. And when we make changes, big or small, people are going to fall by the wayside, and other people are going to become even stronger. Their presence becomes stronger, and that's okay. So I don't know if that answers your questions because I feel like
Yeah, no, it does. And one of the things too, I was thinking when you were talking about the relationships piece, I had actually been really thinking a lot about, I was talking about this very topic last week, and it was about how I'm feeling a lot closer to newer connections than I am with people I've known for decades. And it's just because my newer connections, I'm in a different headspace, a different person altogether. And so those relationships have become really strong based on because those are the type of people I'm bringing into my life. And then I'm thinking back on my previous relationships, and it's not that they're not important to me, but I just don't feel that closeness. So I love that you talked about that because it's not a bad thing necessarily if you've moved on, because that's, people are busy. Life is, not easy. And so sometimes even they don't even realize that the relationship has changed because they're just, because life is going on around them. So one of the things I want to talk to you about is the pressure to keep performing, even when the success you've built no longer fits. Like, I think that's kind of like what you've been talking a little bit about. So how do you help women, if when you work with women, differentiate between success that looks good on the outside versus that success that feels good on the inside? Because I
Right.
feel like there's that feeling, the emotional piece to it that's really important.
So that's really interesting because what you just said previously about the relationships and that is all connected. Like all three buckets are connected actually. The physical, the emotional, mental, and the purpose and the relationship ones is it's all interconnected. And that's why when I work with people, whether they know it or not, like they come to me for one reason, but we work on all three of them because you can't, it's like the three-legged stool in spirituality, like all three legs need to be in alignment in order for the stool to stand up. And when they're not, that stool can't stand up straight. It's going to fall over. And that's the same with our lives. So the big, big keyword here for relationships as well as success is alignment. That's the big overarching keyword. So if your relationships are not in alignment with who you are today anymore, then they're gonna fade a little bit. And like you said, new people that come into your life are now, there's a reason because this is the energy you're putting out. This is the interest you have and where you, in the circles that you move. And those people will be more in alignment with who you are today than who you were 20 years ago, let's say, or 10 years ago. And then the same with success. So, I have built companies over the last 38 years that I am proud I built, and they were very much in alignment with who I was back then, but they're no longer in alignment with who I am today. Today, my vision, my mission that I have, that's my purpose, the alignment I find in community and building community and supporting each other, in helping people realize what their purpose is and living a life that's aligned to their purpose. And that's very different. And then I think people often judge themselves. They're really harsh, really cruel to themselves to think that I can't change my mind. Like, that I've always, this is what I've studied, and this is, what I went to school for, and this is where I've built a reputation, and I can't change my mind and leave that and do something else. Well, yes, you can. And there's no judgment, and nobody honestly really cares except yourself. Like, you think people are going to be like, oh my God. And maybe some people are. Like, some people are like, whoa, I don't understand. You have a great job and you make great money. How come you don't want to do this anymore? Well, and that's the really interesting part. So when I left 2 years ago, and there was a lot of people like that, you're like, you're crazy. You make all this money. You have this beautiful life. What are you doing? And people distance themselves. And it was hard. It wasn't nice, but and then I came back like a year later, and a few of these people had enough confidence to be honest with me and say, wow, I wish I could have done what you do, or I could do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real truth. Like, people judge out of their own needs that are not met or their own insecurities. But really, you got to just look at your own life and check in with yourself and say, is this in alignment with who I am today? Because life is not the same than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that's what I realized when I sat in the empty house and found that vision board. Like, my identity as a mother wasn't the same than it was even a year before that, when my kids still lived at home and they were going to high school and they needed me. Now they're like, Mom, don't make us feel guilty. Do your own thing. Like, it changed, and the
Yeah.
same with, like, I had achieved what I wanted to achieve in that last company. And I knew this company was doing really well on its own, and there was amazing people in there running it. I realized I was needed somewhere else. I wasn't quite sure where that was, but I knew I needed to move on. So I think it's not selfish at all. And there's no judgment. You really got to follow I call it my soul path. And again, I'm German, I'm very grounded, but there's this part of me where I'm like, okay, this is nagging inside of me. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't get me out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like super excited. What's wrong? Why?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think too is like we grow, and you might know someone from 20 years ago and the way they were, if you hadn't seen them in like 20 years and you saw them, say, for today, like you met up with them and seeing the growth, whether they've grown into a great person or vice versa, whatever that is. But people change because we experience life. It's just, that's how it is. So I love that it's okay being able to, it's just like giving ourselves permission that it's okay to grow and it's okay to change our direction, and we can go out and explore. And I think that's kind of like, even though for me, I'm incredibly grateful to my husband because he had that spirit of wanting to get out into the world and explore. And so, before we started moving around a lot, we still, within 6 months of being married, I grew up in Toronto and we got married there, and then we moved to Florida, and I had no family or friends down there, but it was like we had this adventure together. And so, and people would often comment like, are you sure you know what you're doing? But I think it's just that fear. They're afraid. They want you to be okay. They really, truly do want the best for you. And they just want to make sure that you're making the right decision. But the other part too is like you were saying, the unspoken of like, oh, wow, I wish I could do that, but afraid to say it out loud because maybe then they might think, well, what does that mean about me if I'm not even brave enough to do something like, my friend Sabine has gone out to do. So I want to shift a little bit because your episode is part of the Building Strong Community series. And again, in this series, I've been talking with my guests about what it means to build strong, meaningful communities, especially for women doing big things in the world. I also believe, as I've shared with you before, that I see you as that community builder on LinkedIn. And it shows, again, in how you're posting, how you're bringing people into your world and really getting to know your audience, engaging them to share based on what you're sharing. So with that being said, how has community shaped your journey? And why do you believe having the right people around you is a game changer, especially when you're creating something new or taking a new life path?
So in the past, community is what multiple times saved me when things were really rough. Like I said, when I had the PTSD and I found my way into working out. It wasn't just the physical working out, which yes, the endorphins help and you feel better, but it was also community I was introduced to that was so uplifting and loving and supportive. I couldn't have done it without them. And there was multiple instances in my life, even with the cancer. It takes a village is really the bottom line. Like when you look at the blue zones today, it confirms that. The research shows that people live the longest when they have a sense of belonging to a community. And it makes all the difference in the world for you, again, physically, emotionally, how you show up, what your presence is, what your purpose is, the choices you make with regards to your profession. It shows up in every aspect of your life and it's proven for longevity. And I have experiences in all kinds of different ways of my life. And so I think, so this is like my own experience from the past and what we know through research. What I see today is we're so used to just fending for ourselves, figuring it out for ourselves. And it's a serious problem in this world that we live in. People come to me for two reasons. One reason is I want meaning in my life. I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. Like, I have this idea. Can you help me? So it's purpose. The other one is loneliness. I've worked with so many people who just needed someone to talk to share about their business, to brainstorm with, to have somebody that they were looking forward to talking to at least once a week. Loneliness is a real problem. I think there was a statistic, and I'm not sure if I get 100%, but I'll get the gist of it right, is that like 50 years ago in the US, 7 in 100 people lived alone. And today, it was a really crazy percentage. It was like 7 out of 10 people. It was like really crazy, especially if you go into like metropolitan areas. Right now, so when I came back, I got a little apartment. There's like 250 apartments in here. Oh my gosh, it is so crazy. You meet people in the hallway and people are like, I'm like, hey, how are you? And they're like, mm. People are so on their own. And most people in here live by themselves. They work from home, they live by themselves, they're losing the social skills. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of the more you're alone, the more you crave, like you really deep down, you crave companionship and you crave community, but you start to feel insecure. You lose these social skills and you feel more comfortable being alone and you spend more time alone. And it's a real serious problem. And so what I see, and I've had since I've come back, I've had about 500 calls on LinkedIn alone with people, getting to know people, putting a finger on the pulse of what's going on there, what people need. And with everything I have learned and with everything that I know through what's going on with AI and how we become even more self-sufficient, it's becoming really, really clear and really apparent to me that what I need to, my role today is not like I can provide information, sure, but you can find that just general information on AI, on ChatGPT, anywhere. But what I feel really called to do is to bring people together online, but also physically in person. And that nobody, no computer, no AI can ever replace that. That
Mm.
human interaction, building relationships, and really connecting on an emotional level, nobody will ever take that away from us. That's
Yeah.
something only we can do. And that's where I feel like my path right now is leading me to show up with compassion and empathy and the knowledge that I have on how to build businesses and how to create financial success and all of that, but in a beautiful combination of the emotional component that I can bring to the table from a life the last 55 years lived, like really lived, and no computer can do that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's actually beautifully setting me up for my next question because I know that one of your big missions is making support accessible to all through the Power Life Library. So tell us more about your mission with this endeavor. Like, what gap were you seeing in the marketplace that inspired this platform, and how are you using it to help others turn struggle into success with both compassion and clarity?
So I'm really, really excited about this part. This is, again, I've pivoted again, but by just by learning about what's going on out there and what people need. So as I am focusing on building community, I'm doing it in two ways. When I first came back and I was like, okay, I'm just going to coach people. I'm going to share with people what I know. I got into this, I feel like I got sucked into this void of being a coach and what that meant and what that should look like. So this is how much you should charge. And I started doing that and successfully, like I had high ticket coaching clients and all of that. But at the same time, I started to notice how many people were coming to me from LinkedIn, especially because that's what I focused on, who were like, oh my God, I love your content. I wish I could work with you, but I can't afford you. And then I took a step back and I said, wait a second. This is not what I came back from the mountain for. To build more wealth, to charge people between $3,000 and $6,000 a month. That's insane. That's not what I came back for. I came back for to really help people. So how can I do that? So I pivoted again. I said, I'm not a coach, which kind of that was a really poor way of saying it because now people were really confused. They're like, what are you? What do you do? So I redefined it. I went through a branding, all new branding, and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to focus on building community online, which I've already done organically by just showing up and sharing from my heart and my soul on LinkedIn, but then also in person. So I'm working on that right now, setting up local communities. But then at the same time, I said, I want to make my knowledge accessible to everybody. So I started to brain dump things that I know about business, about life, about healing, about every aspect of our life. So what we talked about earlier into downloadable PDFs. And the difference is because I know there's like PDF farming out there, which this is not, because this is not AI generated, superficial, generic stuff. This is really what I have lived, tried, and what has proven itself to work for me and what I've learned in life turned into downloadable digital files, whether it's video or it's written content. And it's so affordable that nobody has an excuse to not have access to not use it. And that was my goal. And then from there, people can choose and say, well, yeah, I love that. And I want to belong to a community where I meet like-minded people. And then from there, if somebody wants actual one-on-one help with me, they have a choice, but they're not forced to do that in order to get the help. So, and that's one part of the community. The other part is I've met so many amazing coaches online who are like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the exposure. I can't reach the people I want to reach that are extremely knowledgeable and passionate about what they do. So I started to collaborate with them and I said, hey, do you want to create a digital file for me, again, in video content? And we can share it and build this Power Life library together. So people have access to you, they can get to know you, and then have a choice whether they want to work with you in like a group setting or if they can afford it in a one-on-one setting. But this way, we can all support each other and build this beautiful thing, the Power Life Library, together.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you do that. And when you were talking community, it just reminded me of when we first had our coffee chat and you were like, wow, I didn't know anyone actually noticed that I was actually building community. But yeah, like I said, it's your content speaks for itself. Like I see you. This is what you're doing. And it just, like I said, I just realized I have to talk to this woman, get her to be on my show because it shows me that you don't have to be part of a larger grouping of people to have a community, but you can actually be an individual creating that community environment for a larger group of people, if that makes sense. So, but I
Yes, it
love
does.
that.
And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing is, for anybody who doubts that they can do this, don't doubt it, because I didn't. And when you reached out to me, my vision wasn't all that clear. I was just kind of, I feel like going down this lazy river, like figuring out where my place was and how I could show up for people and how I could be of help. And the group, when you put yourself out there authentically, without being salesy. Like, there's nothing salesy about me. Like, I don't try to sell anybody anything because I don't have to, but you show up authentically with your heart and your soul and your hands say, this is what I'm sharing vulnerably and authentically. And it's real and it's transparent and it's honest and all of that stuff. Groups form and communities with that form automatically. And this is what happened on my LinkedIn account. Like I put a bunch of people together and said, hey, I think you guys should all meet. You guys are all aligned. You're vibing all the same. Your intentions are all the same. I think you should meet and maybe you can collaborate and support each other. And this group went on and people started to invite more people. And then I said, well, I think this is done. Like, go, go, go. And they were like, no, we want to stay. Can't we keep this group and keep growing? And that's it was around the time when you reached out to me. And I'm like, wow, I thought I had to like force it and make it formal and say, oh, here's a group and this is what we do. But it happened organically and it's so beautiful and it's just growing organically. And so anybody can do this. Just like lean into who you are and share that with the world, and you will attract the right people and the community will form on its own because this is, as human beings, what we should be doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, final question. For the woman who's listening, who's built success, but's craving meaning, freedom, and a deeper sense of aliveness, what's one bold but grounded step she can take this week to move closer to the life she actually wants to live?
I believe that we need to get back to trusting our intuition more. And like I said earlier, I think we've gotten really judgy and we're our worst critic when it comes to our feelings. And I want you to pay attention to what you're feeling. The good feelings, okay, they're good. That's cool. You know, you're on the right path. You're doing something that you enjoy. You're in the place you need to be. That's all good. But I want you to pay attention to the bad feelings. So, what we consider bad feelings. When you don't feel like doing something, or when something feels off, or it gives you that icky feeling, pay attention to this and stop. And that's why I said bad, because they're not bad. They're red flags that come up and give you direction of something that's going on that's not in alignment with who you are and where you should be. And pay attention to them and welcome them in and say, okay, I am feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? Is it, and I am really honest with myself. Like, for example, like going to the gym, people are like, I can't believe you're so disciplined. I 5 out of 6 days a week. But it's not the discipline, it's motivation that I have that comes from the inside. But the thing is, when I don't feel like it, which I do have days where I'm like, oh, I don't feel like it. I'd rather just stay home, do like nothing for a change. I check in with myself and think, okay, is there a real reason for this? Or am I just being lazy? And if there is a real reason because something is feeling off physically, then I have enough self-love to say, you know what? Take it easy. Go for a walk instead or catch some rays. I think this will suit you better right now. But if it's just because I just don't feel like it, like, I would rather sit on the sofa and, I don't know, eat ice cream than sure we do. Of course we do, because our bodies are to make us feel comfortable and not work that hard. But that's not a valid excuse. I get my ass into the gym and I go do it. So check in with yourself. Be really honest with yourself and welcome those negative, what we call bad feelings, and check in where they're coming from. Is there an underlying misalignment? Or is it really just like, "Oh, I just don't feel like it, you know? And then treat it like, for me, it's like brushing teeth. There is certain things in life that are just non-negotiable. You get up in the morning, you go to the bathroom and you brush your teeth. Okay, do we ever lay in bed and say, I don't feel like brushing my teeth today. I don't think I'm going to brush teeth. No, there's like non-negotiables. That's not. But welcome those feelings that don't feel good and start digging and ask yourself, let's be honest. What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? I knew back then when I didn't feel like getting up at 5 anymore to work, something was off. And it wasn't because I'm lazy, I'm not. But it wasn't in alignment anymore. And that's when I knew I had to let that business go because I couldn't serve it as well as somebody who would be excited about it. I was burned out.
Mhm. Yeah. I love the fact that you recognize that because a lot of people don't. They push through because they feel like that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what success looks like. That's the measure of success or that's the price of success. So, Sabine, thank you so much for spending time
Thank
with me
you.
today. I
Thank
really
you, Leslie.
appreciate you sharing your story from you navigating reinvention, which is incredible, and rebuilding from alignment to the way that you're now using your experience, your life experience to really empower others through the Power Life Library. I really love learning and hearing about your perspective on what it means to disrupt patterns that no longer serve us, redefine success on your own terms, and create support that's truly accessible for the women who need it most and for your community. Again, your journey is powerful and it's a reminder that, you know, success, it doesn't have to come from us pushing and pushing. It comes from being present and understanding and being able to take that step back. Like you were saying, pay attention to what you're feeling, what you're thinking. I think a lot of people think they have to perform to be powerful, to be seen as successful. But I know that that's not true. And it's something that I've been leaning into and wanting to teach other people to understand that your life can be so beautiful if you just allow yourself to just have those moments of reflection and say, like, this doesn't work for me anymore, and be okay that that's okay. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here with me today.
Thank you, Leslie. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Sabine directly and learn more about her work and, of course, the Power Life Library, be sure to check the show notes for all her information. Remember, every choice you make to honor what's true for you, even the smallest yes, is a powerful step toward a life that feels aligned, fulfilling, and deeply your own. And you don't have to do it alone. When you surround yourself with the right people, the ones who see you, support you, and walk alongside you, that life becomes not just possible, but sustainable. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
If you can't pronounce it, why drink it? Other plant-based milks are loaded with gums, oils, and mystery ingredients. Malk keeps it simple. With simple ingredients you can count on one hand. No gums, oils, fillers, or anything else you can't pronounce. Visit malkorganics.com to find Malk near you. Taste the difference today.
Electricast.
Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your host for the Candle Power Hour.
Electricast.